In the quiet village of Godric's Hollow, behind ivy-clad stone walls and the soft murmur of trees, lived the Dumbledore family. At first glance, they seemed like any other wizarding family, reserved, private, and bound by tradition. But beneath the calm exterior, a painful secret lay hidden, so deep that even time struggled to heal it. Ariana Dumbledore, a bright, curious child with long golden hair and big blue eyes, once had a magical spark that shone like invisible fireflies around her. However, unlike most young witches and wizards who reveled in their powers, Ariana's magic was unruly, raw, and uncontrollable. One summer day, while playing in the garden, Ariana caught the attention of 3 local Muggle boys. They watched in disbelief as flowers bloomed at her feet and birds veered off course to follow her. What began as innocent curiosity quickly turned to fear, and fear turned to cruelty. Terrified by the magic they couldn't understand, the boys attacked her. The details of what happened next were never fully revealed, but the damage was irreversible. Ariana was found lying in the garden, trembling, broken, not just physically, but emotionally and magically shattered. She never spoke of the incident, and her once playful magic disappeared, replaced by an inward storm of power that no one could control. Her father, Percival Dumbledore, was the first to find her. When he saw his little girl, shaken and traumatized, something inside him snapped. Instead of turning to the ministry or seeking justice through the courts, Percival took matters into his own hands. He hunted down the Muggle boys and exacted a brutal, unforgiving revenge. He was arrested and sent to Azkaban, but he never spoke a word of why he did it. His silence was a shield to protect Ariana. Percival died in prison, branded a dark wizard by the public, yet a hero to few who understood the truth. With him gone, Ariana's mother, Kendra, moved the family away from the public eye, raising Ariana in isolation. Albus, the eldest son, buried himself in his studies, rising to prominence at Hogwarts as one of the most talented wizards of his time. But underneath his success, guilt gnawed at him. He blamed himself for not protecting Ariana, for being too consumed by his ambitions to see her pain. Meanwhile, Ariana's condition worsened. She had moments of clarity, days when she was calm, kind, even joyful. But when her emotions flared, so did her magic. Glass shattered, walls trembled, and shadows moved without cause. Kendra did her best to manage, until one tragic day when Ariana's magic spiraled out of control, killing her mother in the ensuing explosion. Albus returned home, now at the peak of his brilliance, only to be forced back into a world he could not fix with magic. He took over the care of Ariana and their younger brother, Aberforth, but the family was fractured beyond repair. During this time, Albus met Gellert Grindelwald, a brilliant and dangerous wizard who dreamed of a world ruled by wizards for greater good. Albus, desperate for an escape, was intoxicated by the ideas Grindelwald espoused. The two became inseparable, united by ambition and a shared vision of a new world. But the brothers' bond was irreparably broken when Aberforth confronted Albus. He accused his brother of neglecting Ariana, of using her as a justification for his grand ambitions. The confrontation turned violent, with wands drawn and a duel breaking out between Albus, Aberforth, and Grindelwald. In the chaos, Ariana was killed. No one knew whose spell struck her, and Albus never forgave himself. Aberforth could never forgive him either, and Grindelwald fled the country, beginning his rise as the dark wizard who would soon terrorize the wizarding world. Ariana's death marked the end of the Dumbledore family as it once was. She became a quiet symbol of all that had been lost: innocence, family, and the cost of unchecked ambition. Her portrait still hangs in the Hogshead Inn, owned by Aberforth, hidden behind a secret passage leading to Hogwarts. Some say her spirit lingers there, a silent reminder of the Dumbledore family's darkest hour. After Ariana's death, the Dumbledore home grew eerily quiet, not peaceful, but paralyzed by grief and guilt. Albus, once the brightest young wizard in Europe, stood amid the wreckage of his own ambitions. He never spoke of Ariana's death, not to anyone. The world thought it was an accident, and the ministry didn't investigate. Albus said nothing, burying himself in his work. He returned to Hogwarts, not as a student, but as a teacher, channeling his pain into purpose. But behind his eyes, there was a shadow one that would never fade. Aberforth, however, was not as forgiving. At Ariana's funeral, he punched Albus, breaking his nose in front of mourners. "She was your responsibility," he shouted before storming off, leaving their bond fractured forever. Aberforth distanced himself from the wizarding world, becoming the reclusive innkeeper of the Hog's Head. His life was one of quiet bitterness, his grief buried in drink and solitude. But he kept Ariana's portrait hidden behind the wall, a way to keep her close, even as time went on. Meanwhile, the name Grindelwald became synonymous with terror. His rise to power was swift and destructive, fueled by the very ideals he had once shared with Albus. Grindelwald spoke of a world where no child like Ariana would hide, where wizards would reign supreme. Albus, knowing the dangers of unchecked power all too well, avoided confrontation with Grindelwald for years. Perhaps it was out of fear, guilt, or love twisted by betrayal. But in 1945, Albus was forced to face him. The duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald became one of the most legendary battles in wizarding history. It shook the magical world to its core, a fight of light against shadow, of fire and fury. But no one truly knew the full details of that duel. All they knew was that, in the end, Albus emerged victorious. But even that victory came at a cost. The darkness that had plagued the Dumbledore family, the tragedy of Ariana's death, would haunt Albus for the rest of his life. The final battle between Albus Dumbledore and Gellert Grindelwald was one of the most defining moments in wizarding history. The two wizards, once bound by a shared vision of a new world, clashed with an intensity that echoed the weight of their past. The battle shook the very foundations of magic, but in the end, Albus emerged victorious. Grindelwald, the dark wizard who had once been his closest confidant, was imprisoned in Nurmengard, the very fortress he had built to hold his enemies, a stark reminder of his twisted ambitions. But victory was not sweet for Albus. In the silence that followed the duel, some say that Albus cried, not in triumph, but in sorrow. For Albus knew something that the world did not. In defeating Grindelwald, he hadn't just vanquished a dark wizard. He had destroyed the last remnants of a friendship that had once held the promise to reshape the world, the bond that had united them in their youth, filled with shared dreams and aspirations, was now shattered beyond repair. And with it, he had lost a piece of himself. In the end, it wasn't just a magical world that had been changed. It was his soul. Albus had also fulfilled a promise to Ariana, a promise he had broken long ago and could never undo. Ariana's legacy lived on, but it lingered in the shadows, far from the eyes of the world. To the magical community, she was little more than a forgotten sister to a famous headmaster. But to those who knew the truth, Ariana was much more than that. She was the heart of a broken family, the quiet catalyst behind a war, and the soul that Albus could never save. For the rest of his life, Albus carried her with him, not in portraits or stories, but in silence. Her memory was woven into the very fabric of his being, a constant reminder of the choices he had made and the ones he had failed to make. The guilt of not protecting her, of not being the brother she needed, would never leave him. Years later, in a space beyond life and death, Albus found himself standing at King's Cross Station once more. It wasn't the physical place he had once known, but something deeper, something more ethereal. There, he encountered Harry Potter, and for the first time in years, Albus spoke with raw honesty that had eluded him for so long. He confessed his greatest regrets, his hunger for power, the twisted love that had led him astray, and, above all, Ariana. "I was a fool," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "I thought I could remake the world, and in doing so, I destroyed my own." Harry listened, not with judgment, but with an understanding born from his own struggles. Harry, too, knew the weight of carrying the burdens of others. As Albus faded from that dreamlike station, his last thoughts weren't of the Elder Wand, nor of his fateful duel with Grindelwald, nor even of Harry. They were of Ariana, the little girl in the garden, the broken soul left in the shadows, the sister he had failed to protect. And perhaps, somewhere beyond the veil, Ariana had forgiven him.